Welcome. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again for the 15th annual Earth and Peace Day celebration, sponsored by Planet Heart and A Better World. We're so glad you're joining us again. We've been doing this for all these years, having a wonderful time, and this year won't be different, except that we have a different roster of speakers and musicians, and truly we're going to have a wonderful time together. So we are going to start right away with our dear friend, our beloved Bruce Lipton, who is a cellular biologist. I'm going to give you a quick little intro. It would take the whole night if I were to give you all of his credentials. Bruce is an internationally recognized leader in bridging science and spirituality. He's a stem cell biologist, best-selling author of The Biology of Belief, and recipient of the 2009 Goy Peace Award. He has been a guest speaker on hundreds of TV and radio shows, including A Better World, by the way, going back decades, and he is a well-known keynote presenter for national and international conferences. So without further ado, Bruce Lipton, welcome to the celebration. I'm just so pleased and honored to have you tonight.
Mitchell, I am so honored to be here, and especially when you see all the other speakers that are going to be participating today. I'm honored to be among them. And some of them are part of the evolutionary leaders that I know, Kurt Johnson and the wonderful Elizabeth Sartorius, the Hertogs. And it's very exciting to be here. Why? Because Earth Day has real meaning right now. And as a biologist, it's important to recognize that science has recognized itself for 15 years that humans are precipitating what is called the sixth mass extinction of life on this planet. Point is, there were 5 previous mass extinctions when life was thriving and something wiped out up to 90% of life. The last one, 66 million years ago, when the dinosaurs were here, a comet hit near the Yucatan Peninsula, and as a result, wiped out up to 75% of life on planet disappeared, including all the dinosaurs. Well, today we are in the 6th mass extinction, and science has been telling the public for 15 years that human behavior is responsible for undermining the web of life. And people don't recognize that we are an integral element of the web of life. If the web of life collapses, so does human civilization. We're facing an extinction process, not 1,000 years from now, but we're talking decades. Matter of fact, NASA scientists recognize that industrial civilization, the one we're in, is facing an irreversible collapse within the next couple of decades. And so the point about it is this: we're not sustainable. We can't live this way anymore. Nature is telling us this. All the things that are happening around the planet at the same time are symptoms of a bigger picture. We're not sustainable. And this is really profoundly important for why the chaos you see in the world exists. And the answer is this: we can't build a sustainable civilization on today's foundations. And so the falling apart government and structure is falling apart. Well, it's necessary because it's the problem causing factor. And so there, while people are afraid, oh my God, it's falling apart, I'm going, if it doesn't fall apart, then we're going to really be afraid, because now is the time to start building an alternative civilization that is learning to live in harmony. How many years Earth Day has been trying to show people? I mean, day one Earth Day, even day preceding Earth Day, I remember the pictures coming from the spacecraft showing the Earth on the horizon of the moon, which was what precipitated Earth Day, because it was the first time humans ever saw, oh my God, there's only this. And the idea, because the world was way too big to see it, but then you say it's only that. And then the idea of nurturing the planet was instilled, because it said, to stay on this planet, we came from a garden and we've been destroying the garden.
So Bruce, let me ask you, if you make the case so clearly about the 6th extinction breathing down our necks, and we all know it either intellectually or in our bodies, we see the degradation and it's very saddening and heartbreaking. What do you see as the solution? Because we know that there are solutions.
Oh
How do we
God,
pull
yes.
ourselves out from this situation and build according to the ideas of biology?
Well, the most important understanding is this. Quantum physics, which I prefer to refer to as the most valid of the sciences, quantum physics, principle number one is that human consciousness is creating our life experiences. And then the significance of that is then we're not victims of a world, we're doing this. And then once you understand that, then it says, well, we have to change the consciousness to return the garden because we're destroying the garden. There won't be fish in the ocean by 2048. That's a few years down the road. Planet Earth, no fish. We've already lost since 1970, we've lost 2/3 of the entire animal population of the planet. That even in Germany, they've been studying insect populations for 27 years, and the latest survey reveals 75% loss. I go, what does all this mean? It says, these are the elements that create the garden. When they're gone, then the garden doesn't exist. And
So how do we go from here to the world we want, the world we dream of and envision?
Okay, first big understanding. The Matrix movie is not science fiction. The Matrix movie is a documentary. We've all been programmed. It's a natural part of human development. The first 7 years of a child's life, they're not even operating predominantly from consciousness. They're operating from a lower vibration called theta, which is hypnosis. Reason is important. How many rules does it take to be a member of a family? How many rules does it take to be a member of a community? How's an infant going to learn rules? And the answer is nature created a state of hypnosis where they just observe other people, family, community, whatever, and download their behavior. Well, that's how you put a program into the computer. But it turns out, while the conscious mind is creative and we can manifest anything, 95% of our life comes from the program. And that's because thinking interferes with our creativity. Significance here is then this is important for a couple of reasons. One, if we understand that our life is an expression of our program and we don't like it the way it is, then guess what? We have ways of changing the program to create the life that you want, because that's why we're here, creators, okay? That this insight really reveals something else too. The new biology reveals everything is energy. Quantum physics, the universe is made out of energy. Our identity is not actually in this body. Our identity is an energy field. Now, in science, field means invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. And I go, well, interestingly, spirit, definition, invisible moving forces that influence the physical world. Quantum physics is acknowledging the existence of a field of energy of who we are. Point, energy cannot be destroyed. That there is no such thing as a real death. Your consciousness is here. It's an energy field. Okay. When people understand that, the fear of death will be greatly reduced, which is a big issue, because when people are scared, they'll buy other people's stories of what should I do? And now we have to stop being scared. We have to recognize this thing that I mentioned. All of us are programmed, and our lives are not coming from our wishes and desires. 95% is coming straight from the programs. And psychologists revealed 50-60% of those programs that we were downloaded with are disempowering, self-sabotaging, and limiting beliefs. And I say, then live in a world with those programs. And the answer is yes. And look what we created.
Yeah, right.
We're destroying this garden. So
exactly.
It's just coming to who are we? How does it work? And even epigenetics is a science that supports quantum physics, because it says quantum physics, consciousness is creating this reality. Epigenetics, consciousness is creating your genetic activity and your behavior. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, again, when will we earn or learn that thoughts are manifesting, and collective thoughts called culture are the primary shaper of the world? The cultures are failing, that the required breakdown is happening. It's part of our evolution. So for me, that's a positive sign, because if it didn't change, there's a short time between here and that extinction. So I just want people to recognize, don't be afraid of the change. because it is providing the opportunity to create a sustainable civilization. I know Kurt and especially Elizabeth Sartorius will talk to us about that, because this is all part of the evolution we are in. This is what evolution is like. Transition from old, moving into new, with a little bit of chaos in the middle between the old coming down and the new going up. And I want to thank you, Mitch, for letting me be here to talk to this wonderful audience, because we are the creators. And when we understand how we lost our power in programming and learn to reprogram, then we become the creators. And I say that at first it was an intellectual idea, but I reprogrammed my limiting beliefs. And for 25 years, I honestly recognize you don't die and go to heaven. You were born into heaven, the place where we create, the place that we experience, and that this information goes back to our source. And when you know that, then there's a role to be here.
Exactly. Bruce Lipton, that was a beautiful and heavenly note to end on. And I thank you so much for your contribution here tonight, but also overall in the world. You are making such a beautiful difference and educating people so powerfully. Thank you.
And I just quickly want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to this audience, because that's where the future is coming from. All those people watching right now are the cultural creatives that are seeking answers to move us into a thrivable future. So thank all the people online. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you again. To be continued. Oh, well, off to a beautiful start, huh? Talking about sixth extinction. Where do you go from there? Well, we have a lot of places to go, and we will. So on that note, God, thank you, Bruce Lipton. Our next speakers are a lovely couple, dear friends, colleagues, Dr. JJ and Desiree Hertog. They have founded the Academy for Future Science. It is an international NGO, a non-governmental organization, and it's working in over 15 countries. JJ Hertog is very well known for his book, his first book, The Keys of Enoch. It's internationally renowned. Groups, people studying this work, The Keys of Enoch, all over the world. And they both go and visit all of these various groups and help them with interpretation and understanding. They are both social scientists. Dr. Desiree Hertog is also a futurist and co-founder with her husband of the Academy, as I mentioned. And she has been an environmentalist as well and an author herself of several books. It's a pleasure to have them back. They've been on A Better World Radio and TV numerous times, as has Bruce been. And oh, it's so wonderful to see you both. Welcome to our 15th annual celebration of Earth Day. So
thank you so much.
Please enlighten us, my friends.
Well, you mentioned one of my books. The other is Alternative Energy Sources, published by the Hydrogen Energy Society, where I outlined more than 40 years ago the need to use tar sands in Canada and throughout the world for alternative energy processes. And of course, Desiree and I also have worked, Mitchell, with indigenous peoples throughout the world. We are honorary members of the Xavante people of Brazil. And I brought with me one of the pictures. Perhaps you can see this if you look carefully, where we're being honored for our contributions to water systems and renewal in southern Brazil. We have had the opportunity also to work in Africa as a South African NGO at the United Nations.
Right. So although we talk oftentimes about consciousness, even higher consciousness, we're going to be the oddball out today and really talk about technology, which I know, Mitchell, is one of your favorites as well, because it's really important that we know what's going on. I think that's absolutely critical. And right now, our CO2 levels are the highest they've been in 800,000 years. It's amazing. And this is actually from NOAA, the National Atmospheric Research Association.
I thought Noah's Ark.
I know, we're ready for that one. But anyway, it's about 412 parts per per million in the environment. It's so high, it's ridiculous. But and it's causing, it doesn't go away. That's the main thing people don't realize, that about 50% of what is in the atmosphere has been put there in the last 175 years. So it either stays there or it goes into oceans, or a little bit comes back to Earth and a little bit maybe dissipates somewhere else, who knows. But the interesting thing about the oceans, of course, and we see this, we have friends here right now here from Australia, the coral reefs are having a major problem because literally it's gone up something like lots of acidifications, like 30% of all that gets into the oceans. And there's an interesting technology I want to talk to people about. It's called bio-rock. It was designed by some marine experts. And all you do is you put some metal bars like rebar around a certain structure, and you put minimum electricity. Right now, they're taking it from the local islands around Indonesia, but you could also just as well get it from solar, which they're playing with, this, that, and the other. And you actually start growing back or growing new coral reefs. And they use calcium carbonate. And literally it grows faster with this process than natural reef. So, I mean, it's just so exciting. And I think this time we're in that right now, I can pinpoint each of the problems, but you got to also pinpoint the solutions. And yes, it's consciousness. Yes, it goes back to what we have to do to literally change our consciousness of the planet, to move away from fossil fuels, especially coal, which is really polluting a lot of this stuff, and going into renewables. But, there are solutions. We've got to put the money and the energy behind it.
Years ago, as a consultant with Jet Propulsion Lab, I had the opportunity to work with ground penetrating radar as well as remote sensing radar over the Yucatan Peninsula, over Belize and Guatemala. And we, to our shock, found a matrix of over 400 canals that were used to bring fresh water into the interior. We have a picture here, Desiree can show you. Remarkable juxtaposed are the jungle foliage without the canals, and then with radar, you see the close-up of the canals that interlock, explaining the ingenious hydraulic systems that the ancients were able to employ. The problem was people did not pay attention to the sunspots, and suddenly the whole civilization collapsed.
Right. So they don't really think anymore it's the Spaniards that came that wiped out the indigenous people that were there. It was environmental changes. It was climate change where water levels went down to 30% of their norm in the Yucatan. And they had a minimum of 2 million people at the time of Christ, who mostly got wiped out in about 500 and 700 AD.
Actually, the National Geographic is now revising, suggesting upwards of 12 to 15 million people.
Well, yeah, and that's a question because they just see all these houses that were there. Let me go on to why airborne technology is very important. So if you take a look at methane, right, which by itself, it's about 20% of what we're putting out in the atmosphere, but it's like 80%. It's much stronger in terms of a greenhouse gas than CO2.
But and it also dissipates so much faster as well.
Right, it does. It doesn't hang out. So if we can stop the methane leaking, from various sources, we can make a real difference. So what they recently found from airborne and spaceborne devices is that oil wells really do leak. They leak methane. They don't leak just carbon fuels. They leak methane. And excitingly enough, there is now a company that's called Canadian GHG Sat, which actually has 2 methane hunter satellites going around this planet, measuring how much methane is coming out of the oil wells around the globe, because there's a lot of places that have controls. I mean, even in California, we have limitations on how much methane can be released, but no one was measuring it. Now we're measuring it. Now we're seeing, hey, these oil wells, and probably everywhere, but we're certainly monitoring them in California, have been leaking. And so that's exciting that we can start, we'll say, dissipating the methane. Yes, people blame animals and cows and everything like that, but let's get our own act in order.
Can they measure what comes out of cows?
I think they probably could, but I don't know if they've really looked that seriously.
Well, more seriously, to follow up what Bruce has said earlier, we're looking at the rapid melting of Greenland, as well as the South Pole area of the Antarctic. And of course, it is anticipated that the sea level will rise dramatically 36 feet plus. It's interesting, last year, Science magazine, which is one of the best, had an article called Fallback Strategies, where they have outlined various technologies and various locations where urban populations will have to be relocated. Over 16 million people because of, as it were, population sources along the major oceans of the world will have to suffer a fallback, quote unquote, of going to better or higher land. In fact, the insurance companies will no longer pay for the bailout in Miami Beach along the Florida coastline.
They still are, but we have pictures of ourselves just standing on the street, standing in water. And it's just salt water coming out of the literally the drainage areas on the beach where normally rain would drain into the ocean. Now the ocean's coming up into the streets. It's very interesting.
But the good news is there are strategies that do work.
I think the most interesting thing and the question that all of us should have, because we've been supporting the Hydrogen Energy Society since literally the late 70s, is our next car in 5 years going to be battery electric vehicles or fuel cell electric vehicles? And it's an interesting challenge that's going on right now with both of these car companies. Pretty much hydrogen was always able to take you farther on one charge, but now electric vehicles are catching up to that. So that's an exciting factor. There's a lot of other things. It seems that, just to wrap it up, because I know our time is short, that trucks actually will be the better for using hydrogen because you can have lots of weight. You can put tons of things in the truck and still run it with hydrogen. Whereas cars, if you're going with one or two people, you actually probably will get a better efficiency ratio on electric vehicles. So if you're driving locally and things like that, and a lot of the electric vehicles are getting up to 400 miles per gallon on one charge. I mean, that's the newest going on.
And the only byproduct, of course, is water. The connection between a car or truck and a hydrogen source is only less than 5 minutes.
And I just have to say that we're kind of experts also in what's called Brown's gas or HHO, oxyhydrogen. It's fabulous, and trucks are already using, especially in Canada, as a additive to their fuels to get better mileage. And everyone's looking, especially now, for better mileage. So it's exciting to start getting into hydrogen, to also have a competition going. And yes, there's more charging stations, right now with battery, we'll say EVs than fuel cell, but let's make that our challenge for the future. Let's get hydrogen out there with, again, only water.
So the bottom line is we need to put together the fantastic positive sociological and psychological impulse that will take us beyond the current challenge of whether we will endure biospheric collapse within the next 20 years. I'm an optimist. I know civilization has gone through many cycles, but humanity has come out, even humanity that has learned to, quote unquote, breathe underwater. So we must bring together a synergistic approach. The planetary sciences, the psychological and the sociological sciences, what I will call really the kickstart of having a higher consciousness, realizing that we are very, shall we say, endowed with gifts that can put us across the chasm of space.
So two more exciting things we just want to mention that we've supported also is saltwater batteries, or what's called sodium ion batteries. They seem to be able to actually ultimately compete with lithium ion batteries. There's not that much lithium on the planet. Yes, we'll probably survive for a while, using lithium ion, but ultimately there's about 1,000 times more salt on this planet than there is lithium. And even though right now there's a lot of competition going on with how good salt can really be part of this new battery operation, it certainly is clear that if you're having solar panels in your house, designing saltwater or sodium ion batteries will be fabulous for your house, for the backup storage. And I want to say one other point that I think is all really also exciting. You want to say about saltwater batteries? Why are we interested in that, Dr.
Because in Egypt, we found that the Egyptians made use in their underground hydraulic areas what we will call saltwater batteries.
I
And
know
we actually
that.
have exhibits of this. So the greatest bread box or bread basket, shall we say, in the ancient Near East was Egypt. They knew how to use recycling of fresh water and salt water. But another point I want to say quickly is the sky and space is the new frontier where our satellites can monitor through remote sensing technology, topologies, changing weather patterns, and we can beam down in a matter of minutes information that can move the developing nations into a higher, shall we say, countermeasures of how to sustain themselves. We've done this in Africa with Mike Bauer using solar cells to make more refrigeration units available for African farms. So there's a tremendous renaissance of science that includes also work that you, Mitch, have been involved with in California that can turn the wheel forward and at the same time preserve human and social integrity.
And a final thing for us going into space, I look forward to EVTOLs, which is literally either self-driving or with one person. They're going to be like taxis. We're going to be able to go from the top of a roof in New York silently using EV, electric vehicles, to fly us to the nearest airport very quickly. Literally, you can get to 10 miles in 10 minutes without any traffic in New York because you're up above. I think it's so exciting. This is our future. We got to move forward. We got to put our money there. We got to put our minds there, and we're going to make a difference.
Positive thinking is going to bring us through. And each of us are, shall we say, citizen diplomats of a whole new structure of building a world safe and sound, consistent to what the indigenous call Mother Earth. Pachamama must be in our eardrums, in our heart, in everything we do. We are one global community waking up to the challenge of a new civilization, and Mother Nature is pushing us quickly into that reality.
Thank you for the great opportunity to share with you. We'll be back again with you sometime.
We sure will be. In fact, I'm not letting you go. We have to, I think I have to come out to Sedona so we can finish this conversation. But I do want to make a couple of points based on some of what you have both said here. I love you both. I so love the work you've been doing for all of these decades, such a contribution to our world. Even on 60 Minutes, there was a segment just this past week on the eVTOL flights. Futurist and green economist Hazel Henderson introduced me to technology that is a dirigible that is all based 100% on hydrogen. And it is going to be the new mode of freight travel at an entirely clean, fossil fuel free state. This is where we're going. And as you both so well highlighted, it's extremely exciting what's going on. And yes, JJ, your reference to what I'm doing with Blue Power System and having a totally off-grid system. So we're no longer investing in the monopolies of the centralized utilities that have got outages happening all over the place, all over the world, and certainly even our so modern country. So we have answers, as you were both saying. We have solutions, and I so applaud what you're doing in that space. So
Thank
thanks
you.
so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on and continuing the work. Until next time. So, oh God, are we having fun yet? Oh my God, it's like old home week around here. These are my delightful friends and colleagues that are here to share their hearts and their minds and their lifelong studies. Bruce Lipton and the Hertogs. It's just, this is the way it is, and there's a lot more to come. But now we have a little musical interlude. We have the music actually coming through a video because Aliza Hava, our next musician and performer, is living off grid. And the connection's a little wobbly. So she did send us a very beautiful video that she made with her singing. Aliza has been on with us in the past. She's an award-winning songwriter and singer whose music reflects the deepest levels of love, life, and positive social change. Roland, hit it.
repair your own mind for the sake of Earth, kind.
Wow. Aliza wanted this to be dedicated to her dear friend who wrote the song, whose name went past so quickly I couldn't get it. But in honor of him and Aliza, that song has been played here and enjoyed. So thank you so much, Aliza Hava, for contributing that beautiful, beautiful song. I do not see, we have a couple of young adults that are going to be coming on to do a small theater piece. And how do I put this? Their parents were concerned of them staying up too late and wanted to come on earlier. And Kurt Johnson was kind enough to make room for that to happen. But I hope they didn't go to bed already, but they're not on our Zoom call right now, so I can't reach them. So Kurt Johnson, if you would please step up again and take the spot that we had originally for you, that would be wonderful. Dr. Kurt Johnson, as Bruce cited, we are surrounded by evolution biologists today. It's a very interesting thing, and I did not plan it that way. But looking back, I saw that this was happening, and I realized how important it is that while environmental science is really sort of the thing of the day, underneath that, the undergirding of that really is biology. The bios, of course, in the ancient Greek, meaning life, and logos meaning, of course, the word, and the logic of the word. So here we have yet another one who is truly one of my favorites. Dr. Kurt Johnson is director and founder of Light on Light Press, Light on Light magazines, and the Convergence series on Voice America. He is a noted evolutionary biologist and comparative religionist. A former monk with a PhD in evolution and ecology, Kurt was associated with the American Museum of Natural History for 25 years. So without further ado, if we can find Kurt around here, we are going to invite him. Beautiful. Welcome, Kurt Johnson.
Yeah, thank you so much. And the first thing I'm doing is looking at the clock. So I will need to be done by 7:51. So obviously, every time we tell a story, there's a little bit of bad news, and then it moves to some good news. So mine will be no different. But we'll really start out with what Bruce already said, and that is when we're speaking of Earth, we're really speaking of one superorganism that's made up of three different arenas that we used to think were separate. So we know they're completely intertwined now, the geosphere, the biosphere, and then the noosphere, to use that term about human consciousness and human mind. And as Bruce pointed out, as did the last musical piece, the real bad apple in the cart is what we've done with the noosphere and our bad behavior as Homo sapiens. So here's the deal. So in evolutionary biology, they define catastrophe as something that changes the norm so completely that there's an indeterminate period of time to find a new normal. And again, Bruce pointed that out when the bolide, the comet, the meteor, whatever it was that hit Yucatan and just upset the apple cart for millions of years. So same thing when we play a billiard game, we always set the balls up between every game. The minute you break them with the cue ball, it's a whole new ball game. So that's actually how evolution science defines catastrophe. It just turns the apple cart upside down. Well, we really have four catastrophes right now that we're dealing with. One would be enough, but we actually have four. So kind of run through them just to get a feel. The first one we know, of course, is the climate challenge, or what could become the climate catastrophe. And we don't need to say more about that because we're so aware of that being one of the big elephants in the room. Now, the other one that we experienced lately is the pandemic. And no matter where we landed on our feelings about the virus or the pandemic, there's no doubt that it absolutely upset the apple cart relative to day-to-day life, travel, economics, and so on. But there are two more that very often we don't recognize, and we need to recognize them because they're really super important. And so I'll just go through those two. So the first one is being called the information catastrophe. And the information catastrophe, as many of you know, is that it's so difficult anywhere in the world today to know what's actually true, to actually know what's actually a fact. There is so much control or lack of control in media that whole sectors of our population have no idea what's true. So families call each other between Ukraine and Russia. They won't even believe each other when it comes to trying to report that, you know, a sibling was killed or whatever the case may be. And so if we can't actually even know what a fact is, we're not going to be able to make decisions about our future that are going to really serve us well. Now, the next one is another one that's not talked about enough, and it's referred to now as the governance catastrophe. And the governance catastrophe is that in recent years, as we've seen, human beings around the world got fascinated again with dictators and autocrats. And they forgot from their experiences before, from World War II and other experiences, that those types of things always dead end eventually, but they dead end with incredible collateral damage. So right now, we seem to be in this perilous situation of, instead of entrusting to some form of participatory governance, we have people who are allowing narcissistic leaders and tyrants and really amoral persons have what amounts to unbridled power. So we're actually sitting then in a lot of challenges, and particularly those last two, the information catastrophe and the governance catastrophe, we often, don't think of. All right, so what's the good news? Well, the good news is, and Bruce knows this, as does Elizabeth, that in 2015, 2016, our colleague in the Evolutionary Leaders, David Sloan Wilson, along with E.O. Wilson at Harvard, and now the whole mainstream of evolutionary biology, understood that there really are different kinds of natural selection, and only one of them is the old Darwinian one that makes selfish decisions that result in competition and conflict and everything that goes with that. That's the old Darwinian natural selection. But once we had supercomputers and once we could really look at gigantic data sets, it's very different how groups make decisions, or groups of groups, what's called multi-level selection, how it makes decisions in nature and also in ourselves. So the good news is that in group selection and in multi-level selection, decisions are always made for the good of the whole. And now we understand, because of understanding group selection and multi-level selection, how altruism evolves. Science finally understands how goodness evolves. Truth then is that if nature is left unimpeded, it will always make the decisions that will move it toward a collective altruism that actually serves the whole. So again, that points out, as Bruce said, that the real thing that's standing in the way, and Mitchell said this as well, is the narratives that are in human beings' heads about property ownership and about power and about identity and about dominance hierarchies that absolutely stop the natural evolutionary process toward altruism and toward what would actually serve the whole. So if we go then in the last couple minutes here to what can we do, because that's what we were all asking, we really can attack these things from the noosphere on down. We can start taking responsibility for our human behavior. And here is where groups like ourselves, the evolutionary leaders, A Better World, on, are the great educators at the civil society grassroots level of how we need to behave to have systems that really work for the benefit of all. And we can actually be so active there. If we can turn the heart toward its own natural understanding, as the wisdom traditions have always known, about goodness and kindness and reciprocity and mutuality and compassion, the heart will immediately respond to those and say, yes, that's the world that I want. So we're definitely dealing in a gigantic potential paradigm shift between the old ways that we've behaved, that were embedded at a global level, that we now see just will not work and don't work, to understanding what works for we. So again, to honor our friend Rick Ulfik, it's all about that journey from me to we, and we have to take it on all these levels. But the good news is that the evolutionary process itself is on our side. If it's left unimpeded, it will always make decisions for the good of the whole. So I'm even 2 minutes short
Well, you can use those 2 minutes, Kurt. You're on a roll. Well, you know what? Maybe I'll just intervene here a little bit. And number one, want to just thank you for mentioning Rick Alpha, because he's a dear friend of all of ours here. He has been a very key player in all of these years of our doing this event, the Earth and Peace Day event and celebration. And we miss him this year, and we wish him the best in terms of his recovery. But also I want to say, in light of the work that David Sloan Wilson has been doing, as have you been so much, in reinterpreting the nature of the survival of the fittest to the survival of the kindest, I think it's really valuable to remember that our heart is actually a brain. It has some 40,000 neurons, neuroreceptors in it, and it is operating autonomously, and it thinks as a brain. And so when the elders of all indigenous groups world round say, think with your heart, or do as thy heart bid thee, this is not just pure, beautiful poetry and metaphor. This is actually grounded in science, interestingly. Now,
Yeah,
they
and just to summarize, as you said,
version of science, but they knew
Yeah.
science in their bones.
yeah, and just to summarize, as you said, survival of the fittest is true, but what happens is the definition of fitness changes in a complex system. The minute you have a complex system, the only way you can embrace that is by more and more inclusion. So survival of the fittest, then the definition of fitness becomes who's the best cooperator, who's the best friend, who's the best helpmate. And that's the understanding that we need to understand. Even all the data sets in the biosphere, the water strider data, that's an incredible data set, how the good guys win, because the system always picks for what serves the whole. And this just hadn't been seen in the old Darwinian model.
Yes, exactly. Very well put. Very well put. Well, it's always very interesting, and I always love the fact that there are so many of us and evolutionary leaders like Lynn McTaggart, who wrote the book, The Bond, that is underscoring the idea ultimately of the communal bonding, and Bruce is big on this, the communal bonding that takes place in the body, by the way, in terms of groups of cells that become tissues, that become organs, and they're all cooperating. We don't think about it that way, but they are intelligent life, sometimes much more intelligent than our conscious minds, and they're doing their thing. In Chinese medicine and Chinese energetics, it happens that there are thought to be a spirit intelligence that accompanies every single organ and meridian in the body that is actually governing. It's their way of expressing the intelligence of the cells, if you will. So what we find, the more we look cross-culturally, the same ideas bubbling, if you will, to the surface. And thank you, Kurt Johnson, for your good work. You are a gift to the planet. Everybody knows it, and we talk about it all the time. So thank you for being here today and sharing your intelligence and wisdom with us.
My pleasure. And I hope the kids got some sleep.
Yeah, it looks that way now, doesn't it? One last little announcement from our one of our speakers.
Mitchell, you're muted.
Wow, am I muted now? Okay. Thank you, Kristen. That's so funny. I didn't do it, folks. I swear my hands were in the air. But anyway, I did want to make one quick announcement. It sounds like people are trying to get in to the Facebook through the link, but are having trouble, or someone has hacked. It's not a biohack, but it is a hack, it seems. And people are being asked for the credit card or some crazy thing. Just don't do that. Ignore it. And if you can't get in now, don't worry. This will be posted on our YouTube channel, A Better World TV show, afterwards. So you won't be missing out. You'll be missing out on a little of the fun of the live event, but you won't miss out on the joy and the energy that each one of our speakers and performers is presenting. So just to share that. So now we have, is everything working here? Yes. We have as our next speaker here, evolution biologist again, Elizabeth Sartorius, PhD, internationally known as a dynamic speaker, which you'll see yourself in just moments, and a media personality. She's an evolution biologist, as I said, futurist, author, and consultant on living systems design. Her books include A Walk Through Time, From Stardust to Us, Biology Revision, co-authored with Willis Harman of IONS, and Earth Dance, Living Systems and Evolution. And I wanted to also add to that another wonderful book of hers called Backs Are Us, as in bacteria are us. So with that, I'd love to bring Elizabeth on to the show today. And there you are. Beautiful. Elizabeth, welcome to our event.
Mahalo, thank you, and aloha from Hawaii. From Hawaii. I'm a planet person and an island addict, so I've lived on islands in Greece and in Spain and now in Hawaii. And I did my best work not in universities as an evolution biologist, because that was all Darwinian training, Kurt? And but I did a postdoc at the Museum of Natural History in New York. And I ended up on a Greek island, as I said, doing my best work and really tracking what I came to call a cycle of maturation in evolution, which is exemplified now in this multi-level selection, multi-level or particularly group selection, as well as individual selection that Kurt was just talking about. And so the cycle of maturation, you see the competitive, exploitative, expansive economy stage as a youthful phase that has to mature into a stable cooperative phase. Mitchell, you were talking about ourselves in the same sense that they're so cooperative. We are an expanding economy up to adolescence, and then we level off and become a mature cooperative group made of so many cells and all our bacterial and viral inhabitants as well. So, you know, humans have actually always experimented with both group kinds of governance and top-down authoritarian class society kinds of governance. And this is very well spoken of in a new book called The Dawn of Everything. And my favorite part of the book is the beginning of it, where they speak of the Native Americans in interaction with the Europeans who came over as missionaries and traders, as well as, you know, conquistadors and things of that kind. And these people lived with each other for long periods of time and learned each other's languages. And the missionaries in particular recorded the conversations between the Native Americans and the fur trappers and copper traders and people like that. And some of them got back to Europe, especially through the missionaries trying to explain why they couldn't make Christians out of these Native Americans. And these conversations turned out to be kind of like the Native Americans saying, "Who are you people that you are so dirty, you don't bathe, you take things away from each other, and you steal from us things that we would be happy to give you? What kind of a culture do you come from?" And some intellectuals in Europe got hold of this, including people like Rousseau, who then spoke of the noble savage. And that played a big role in the Enlightenment in Europe, which is fascinating. Now, I have long been fascinated by the Haudenosaunee culture, which we call the Iroquois in Canada and northeastern United States and in current mapping. And because the Haudenosaunee had the only true democracy I have ever encountered in the world. And it was just an incredible kind of of culture in which, for example, if a chief gave an order, there was no punishment for not obeying that order. Rather, somebody would object to it and call for a dialogue on whether that order really would serve the people or not. And men had to carry a corn grinding bowl into Parliament to propose war and wear a skirt to show everybody what the war would do to the food supply and the women and children. So this is a democracy so worth knowing about. I learned about it as one of the co-founders of the Worldwide Indigenous Science Network, mostly Native people from around the world, and a few of us supporters who were non-Native peoples, but supporting their science. And so anyway, we are now in this last gasp of empire building. We keep talking about democracy and while building empires still. And it's the last chance that the empire builders have of actually building a global empire, which has never been done before because we didn't have the technology that could make that possible. So there has been about 6,000 years in which the empire builders took over and pushed out the more cooperative, communal, caring and sharing societies in favor for these top-down authoritarian ones. And of course, what's happened is that this last wave of empire building has resulted in our fossil fuel addiction and now our disastrous global heating and continued warfare and all of those things that we the people do not want, that we would not vote for as we the people if we really had that power. So we do have to get from that kind of exploitation based on greed to caring and sharing with each other. And we can do it. We know how to do it. We are nature. Now, if you look at major dictionaries, you'll find that the definition of nature kind of excludes humans as though it's what surrounds us. And it's why I would plead with people, stop using the word environment and talk ecosystems so that you are in it. You're part of it. And my favorite metaphor for who we are, since Kurt, you also were talking about the noosphere and Bruce was talking about consciousness. I like to think of us and the whole universe as the metaphor of a keyboard, because all the scientists who disagree on other things seem to believe that the universe really is made of vibrations, which you can arrange in sequence. So see it as a keyboard with matter in the low keys. Then it goes up into electromagnetic energy as you raise the frequencies. And eventually you get into the non-material consciousness, mind, spirit end of the keyboard. Western science has started at the matter end of the keyboard, trying to derive the whole thing with material physical instruments measuring stuff out there in nature, out there as they see it. And then they get stuck because physical instruments can't measure the non-physical part of the keyboard. The Eastern sciences started at the other end with consciousness and derived the whole keyboard by slowing it down through electromagnetic energy to matter. So you can see why you can have one science saying matter gives rise to consciousness and another saying no, consciousness gives rise to matter. When you look at the whole keyboard, you see that it is a matter of perspective on the very same universe. And when we get that we are matter, energy, spirit, not bodies with minds and souls, but matter, energy, spirit continua, and the Taoists have the same continuum, then we see that we have the birthright to commune with all nature at that spirit level. And we need to reclaim that birthright so that we can commune directly, trade information directly with the trees and with the animals and get kids out in nature doing that, talking with, reading them. Because once we really get how deeply embedded we are in nature, we'll stop being the only species that doesn't recycle, which is really crazy and destructive and leading to our doom if we don't stop it. So it's about recycling. It's about adaptation to the climate change. We don't have the power to stop the genie we have let out of the bottle. But we can adapt. We can look back at Earth knowing that she had those whole snowball Earth phases and no snow phases, and that we can adapt, providing we don't snuff ourselves on methane or whatever. We do have the chance. It's all about communion and community, getting into higher ground, taking care of each other. Best thing about COVID was elevating caregivers to heroic status. That's the big learning to me from COVID. And we can all do it. We know what to do. And we, the people, can form this distributed network. Even if the internet fails, we can go back to radio, to shortwave, to whatever is needed to join our eco villages and communities together with each other. The big empire buildings will fall on their faces on their own. We really don't have to bring them down. They're doing very well in doing that on their own. We need to focus on the positive building. And by the way, that hydrogen vehicle that Mitch mentioned is the H2 Clipper. Just go to h2clipper.com. It was invented by my dear friend and brother, Ronaldo Brudico, head of and founder of the World Business Academy. And they have the patents both on this incredible airship and on the pipeline technology that will get things from the dirigible depot to the consumer. So it's a huge breakthrough. It's a wonderful one. And I hope we can use the fossil fuels we have to use still to get the first ones into the air and then get into our completely green economy. Thank you so much. And I hope I didn't go too far over time.
Not at all. We need to make time elastic. Number one, I want to thank you, Elizabeth, for this and everything else you do. I love your encouragement to recycle everything, which I know was what you meant. And I love playing your keyboard. It is some of the most beautiful music possible. When we understand that everything is frequency, as you say, from high to low, low to high, that's not it. It's the totality of all life, all the universe is embedded in that keyboard. And that allows for an understanding and appreciation of every single level of life and of reality, which we don't. As we know, and Kurt is a particular expert in this, as religionists, you know, we have this idea of spirit and matter as separate, and there's a hierarchy even with that. So matter is considered lowly, yet this is where we live, and spirit is considered highly, which everyone is aspiring to, yet we are absolutely made of it, which you have also, you know, implied. So this is the state of things. Another very good point you made, I want to say, is that the Tower of Babel is bubbling over with its own destruction, as it did biblically. And so we don't have to be so concerned about that. It is imploding of its own. Our concern is very much like Bruce has taught us all about the community of cells. And we are those cells in the larger human body. And when we break off into our own local communities, governance like the Iroquois that you referred to, and democracy become possible. When it starts scaling up in size, it seems like it just doesn't work. Some things do not scale. And one of them may well be democracy. It's kind of interesting, right? Thank you so much. So appreciate it. Now we have another beautiful time. I believe we have, yes, we have the children, or the young adults, I should say. Yay. We have, under the tutelage of Sue Blythe, Desiree, and Eden. So if you would take full stage, this is going to be a little theatrical prelude, interlude by children, so we get a sense of what children are thinking and feeling as they are growing up in the world we helped to create. And they are us a few years ago. So, Sue.
Thank you, Mitchell. And I'm going to have to ask for the screen sharing if I can. And I'll introduce Deasia Frazier, who's here from Star Center Theater, and Eden Hendricks, also of Star Center. And we've been learning how to create a world that works for all. So I'm going to, no, it's still disabled.
Okay, I am asking Roland, our technical engineer, to please share the screen. Roland, drum roll, please. Roland. So while he is arranging that, Sue, perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about the context that these two girls come from to
Sure.
stage today.
Yes, well, I am working in Alachua County, Florida, the Gainesville area, where we are working, We the World has a pilot project going in our area, Alachua County, and we have been doing what we call a community-wide climate conversation to action program. And I've been writing a musical play, and this is kind of a workshop in motion, in progress. And so the girls have come to help with that, and we've been doing a 6-week workshop where this is about halfway through, and we are hopefully going to have a story that we can use next fall in schools and communities. So now I've got the, well, it's me. It's great grandma Sage in the year 2050. And I am 103 years old, and my great grandson, Leaf, is asking about the early days of the Climate Collaboratory, the musical, which we did way back in 2022. So our friends, Pacha and Paco, are making a video for our collaborative storytelling adventure, and they need some help. They invite people of all ages to help build a world that works for all. That's 100% of humanity and the community of life on Earth, our home. Let's see what happens.
All right, places everyone. Act 1, Scene 1. Paca, you'll start with your dance. Water, mountains, space, and action.
There we go.
And you suddenly wake up and you realize you were dreaming. And there's an emergency buzzing, blaring.
Bird, bird, emergency, bird, bird, all hands on deck.
And Paca, you run to the deck and you see all the screens of the Climate Collaboratory, and one is flashing red.
Attention, attention, code red for humanity. The planet is getting way too warm.
And we need a scene right here. The Climate Action Simulator shows the Earth's temperature increasing by 3.6 degrees.
Oh no, that's way too warm, isn't it?
For sure, but that's where we're headed with business as usual. We've got some changes to make, and fast.
The planet looks so beautiful from up here. It's hard to believe that people could damage it.
We'll need someone who can tell this part of the story using real climate science.
We'll find them. But let's not worry about that now. Let's keep going.
Well, I do worry about it now. What am I supposed to show in my movie?
I don't know. Let me ask Born in a Cloud. She'll know.
Born in a cloud?
The wise grandmother, I talk to her all the time. We can dream her up right now. Breathing in, breathing out. Thinking of a wise elder born in a cloud of smoke. Breathing in and out. Bringing her close on the web of love. Breathing in and out. Though we can't see or hear her, she speaks to us clearly, so we know.
What do you mean we can't see or hear her? We have to see her and hear her for our movie.
Oh, all right. For starters, we'll bring her in so we can all see her and hear her. Sooner or later, though, she has to become that small, still voice we all have within us.
Fine, but you know me, I have to see it to believe it. So show me now. Ready? Born in a cloud. Take 2.
Breathing in, breathing out. Thinking of a wise elder born in a cloud of smoke. Breathing in and out. Bringing her close on the web of love. Breathing in and out. She appears to us clearly. We can see her and hear her.
Hello, hello. It's me, born in a cloud. I'm near. I'm here. Can you see me now?
We can.
We really can.
How can I help?
We're telling the story of how the human family changed climate change.
Ah, yes, a wondrous story indeed. And that is the story that we're living day by day. In Climate Collaboratory, the musical, we're telling the story of how the human family came together to live as one Earth community with a common destiny. My friends Eden Hendricks and Deasia Frazier are here from the Star Center Theater in Gainesville, Florida. I want to thank you both for helping to act out the beginning of our Climate Collaboratory musical. So thank you, girls. And Deasia, your generation is growing up in a changing climate. What does that mean to you?
In order to change our climate, we have to listen to each other, because we need nature to survive. So we have to listen to each other and to make the changes.
And Eden, what do you think about what's happening to all the living things on our planet? When you think about that, what do you feel and what do you want to do?
I feel really bad because we live on this planet and we need to protect nature and our Earth so that we can stay alive and we can be healthy. And what I want to do is do even just the simplest things, such as picking up trash. Also, some other things I'm not sure we can be able to do, like stop deforestation and make it so that the only forest fires are natural, and also stop people from polluting beaches and forests and cutting down all the trees in the forest.
So many things that we can do to help. So we live in Alachua County, Florida, where the city and the county declared a climate emergency. Our musical play is the centerpiece of a community-wide climate conversation to action program with We the World, the Interfaith Climate Group, and a growing network of climate collaborators. We use the Earth Charter as a guide, and it says,
every individual, family, organization, and community has a vital role to play. The arts, sciences, religions, educational institutions, media, businesses, non-governmental organizations, and governments are all called to offer creative leadership. The partnership of government, civil society, and business is essential for effective governance.
Sounds like a tall order. Some say it'll take a miracle to make the changes we need. Well, I believe in the power of unity, and I believe that we are living in a time of wonderful transformation difficult as it is. And just as past civilizations have advanced through the arts, I believe that the spirit of the age comes through us as we bring our whole selves into making the change we want to see in the world. So these girls have been involved in theater, and Eden, you have experience acting on stage and now on Zoom. And do you think that's a good way to engage other kids and adults, and why?
I certainly think it is, because it's a much interesting way to present our problem. And also it's easier for younger kids to understand. Like some younger kids, they just probably won't be able to understand it if it was put in any other way. So I do think it's a good way to engage the other kids and adults.
And I agree with you. Deasia, I know plenty of adults and elders who want to help your generation to make a world that works for all. Some of us have been working on these issues for more than half a century. What would you like to see as elders and youth learn to work together?
I would like to see the elders to listen to the youth and the youth to listen to the elders to make our environment more likely to be what we want it to be. So it can be clean, so it can just help us just for our nature.
Okay, so we're working toward a healthy environment for all. And Eden, what do you want to say to other kids your age about taking care of the planet?
Just want to say that they've been doing a good job to do small things as they are doing to help the environment, because it takes lots of courage to do what some of the other kids are doing. And it's helping the environment a lot, even though not many people might hear it.
Okay, so everybody doing their share. Deasia, what would you say to your friends about making a world that works for all?
Such as an example, I would tell them like pick up trash. Like even if it's not your trash, just pick up trash. It can help our environment a lot. And I would encourage them to pick up their own trash too, because it helps our environment.
Okay, so keeping it clean and healthy is what we're after. Well, young people like Eden and Deasia give me such hope for a better future. It is a joy to walk with them on the road to 2030, 2050, and beyond. Thank you.
Oh, Sue Blythe, Deasia, and Eden, thank you so much. From the mouth of babes, adorable, as we say in Chinese. It's really French. Very good.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Sue, for walking us through this little theater piece. It's very moving for us all who have been, like you, on this for 50 years. Of course, I started when I was about 2. And to hear the youth speak, we know that we are doing what we're doing for them and other generations, just as the indigenous people have always reminded us, think 7 generations deep, and that should guide our actions. So you are directly involved in that process. So I want to thank you so much for doing what you're doing and bringing them on today with our other guests.
And thank you for the opportunity.
So welcome. So welcome. Did you enjoy that as much as I did? Oh my God. Straight to the heart. Cupid, an arrow right to the heart. Talking about arrows right to the heart, we have some more fun for y'all, as we say in New York. Yes, indeed. We have one of my favorite women and singers and performers, and that's Kristin Hoffmann. Many of you know her. She's a Juilliard-trained singer and songwriter, musician with extraordinary artistic range. You'll hear in a moment. Her music has been heard on major record labels, film and television, and she's performed throughout the world, collaborating with musical luminaries on projects ranging from individual albums to grand symphonic productions. A strong advocate for peace and ocean conservation, Kristen has appeared internationally at environmental concerts and conventions, TEDx San Francisco, the Emoto Peace Project concert in Tokyo, the signing of the Fuji Declaration at Mount Fuji, and with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra in London. And now here for the 15th annual Earth and Peace Day celebration. So, my dear Kristen, so welcome, so beautiful to have you. Thank you so much. And
Thank
now
you,
we
Mitchell.
we're all ears.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here. And everyone this evening has been so incredibly inspiring, uplifting, and the youth that we're just on just touched my heart. And I love that they brought us to the future and asked us to look back, because we're about to do that again with this song. So I feel we're working together already in a theme. I chose for this evening a song that I wrote last year called One Song Singing. And this song, for me, captures one of the most important steps for us to engage within ourselves, within our communities, within on a planetary scale, in order to make the changes and see the world that we want to see come into being. And that is remembering that we are one living family, one living, breathing, planetary organism working together. And it's not just one human family, one planetary family, a full ecosystem. And in order to really step into this, first and foremost, I think we need to listen. Listen to the earth. Listen to nature. Take our cues from what we hear. Take our cues from what we see when we go into nature. And then begin to implement what we learn into our lives and share that with each other. The other part of this equation, when we realize we are one interconnected, living, breathing family, it doesn't mean that we are all the same. We each have our unique gifts. And we're each coming, I believe, to this planetary realm in order to shine and sing our unique song, bring our unique gifts in the way that we know we can. So listening inside to ourselves, for me, it's music. And I use music as a vehicle for awareness and awakening. But for you, it might be sourcing a meal out of your backyard by foraging and creating a beautiful salad to share with those around you, or going to pick up trash on the beach. Or maybe you're an amazing artist. Use your skills to inspire others to connect with the earth. So if you're listening to this, I encourage you to tune in. What is it that I can give, even in a small way? Because as Deasia shared, it is the small little steps that, or maybe Eden shared this. I think I'm mixing it up, but the little steps that we take in our individual lives that may seem small, but if we each do them and we each listen to our unique voice, they add up, and those steps make a huge, huge difference. So let's step into, yes.
The ancient Chinese adage, the greatest journey starts with the first small step.
Yes, the first small step. It's so important. Don't underestimate yourself. Don't get so overwhelmed when you look out at what's happening on our planet that you don't activate your small step, right? Now is our time. Now is our choice. So I'm going to step into this one song singing piece, and I want you to close your eyes for one moment. And let's go back to 2050, or forward to 2050 again, as we just did with Eden and Deasia. And I want you to remember back to this time, a time not in the not so distant future, when the instrument of love was played and heard by every living being on the planet at the same time, and in hearing this instrument of spirit and love and reconnection, we remembered our truest nature. So here we go. Stepping into this space. And Mitchell, I hear you typing, my dear one. Maybe mute yourself. Okay. When the instrument of love was played, all beings fell to their knees, palms pressed deep to the heart of Gaia. All the dying breaths and all the birthing cries were one song singing, one song singing. Ooh, we are one song singing, one song, one song, we are one song singing. When the instrument of love was played, all hatred surrendered to peace. Tears flowed straight to the heart of Gaia. All the anguished sighs and all ecstatic joys were one song singing, one song singing. Ooh, we are one song singing, one song, one song, we are one song singing. One song singing. One song singing. Oh, oh, one song singing. Lift your hands up, feel Gaia's energy. Pressed to the heart of Gaia. Feel that reconnection that you are. Palms pressed to the heart of Gaia. We are one family. Palms pressed to the heart of Gaia. Infinite gratitude, infinite love. Remember your unique contribution and start there.
You have left us all muted. Is it possible that after people hear you, that their bodies are singing?
I hope so, Mitch.
You
I
know?
hope so. That would be an ultimate goal. If bodies are singing in tune with the earth and spirit, then I will be thrilled that I've done my job.
You have done it. You have done it. You were playing Elizabeth's keyboard.
Oh, that was so amazing. I love how she shared about the keyboard. So perfect. Yes.
Kristen Hoffmann, thank you. My guide and my muse.
Thank you, Mitch. And I loved Elizabeth said we are matter, energy, spirit. And I felt that so deeply. If we're just matter, we're going to forget a very huge part of who we are. And if we're just spirit, we're missing why we're here. We're matter, energy, spirit. And in remembering this, I truly know that we can find the healing that we need as a human body and as a Gaian family.
So
Love.
Thank you. If we're just matter, it doesn't matter.
So true.
Right?
So true.
Thank you, Kristen Hoffmann. So appreciate your coming on to our celebration and celebrating with us. You brought this to another level. God bless you. Well, I wouldn't want to have to follow that act, I'll tell you that. However, it is with a very, very special being, Dr. Samarpan Anand Bucalter. You can tell that even from his name. He is doing true work of the soul down in the Amazonian Brazil. He's a chiropractor, yoga teacher, and indigenous health advocate. He's been working with the Yanomami tribe there in protecting them from, well, he'll tell you the story, but we're very glad to have you on, Samarpan, joining us and to share the story of what work you've been doing in this precious, one of the main lungs of the world, the Amazon rainforest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mitchell. And thank you, Kristen, for just opening that space. It's an honor to follow you up. And just getting goosebumps throughout that whole song. And it's very suited for the information I'm going to present you all with. So before I get started, I just wanted to kind of introduce the fact that Black Elk, who is a famous Native American leader, says that we see more than we know and we know more than we can say. And so as I'm doing my best to be a channel of this information that I'm going to be sharing with you, there's so much, it's and I'm still learning. And basically the way I see myself as a conduit and a platform for Indigenous people that usually wouldn't be able to get their message farther than the forest itself to be able to spread further. And so I'm grateful to do my best in being able to translate and be an open vessel for my experiences and what I know and to be articulated to you all. So thank you so much, Mitchell. Thank you for everybody. It's been really beautiful to see how inspiring everyone has been so far and will continue to be. So my I'm Dr. Samarpan Anand Bucalter. I'm a chiropractor, and I've been working in the Amazon rainforest for almost a decade, doing various things, whether it was event coordination for Indigenous cultural events, and now stepping into deeper roles of service with coordinating healthcare projects for the isolated Yanomami people. So I wanted to just introduce basically who the Yanomami people are, the certain challenges that they've been facing, and also just leave on a hopeful note of all the work that I've been honored with the privilege of being invited into, and how you all might be able to contribute to that, whether it's being able to articulate this information to other people or directly connect me or anyone in this project to resources and people that would want to support it. So before we get started, I have a convenient poster, a portrait of a Yanomami person that I was able to acquire in the Amazon. They're beautiful, beautiful people. One of the most culturally intact tribes in the Amazon that have had contact. They are considered recently contacted, which means that there's elders in that community that remember a time where white people weren't a part of their world. And so the Yanomami people, they were thought to have migrated over 15,000 years ago over the Bering Strait all the way down to the Amazon rainforest. And they now dwell mostly in southern Venezuela and the northeast and west of Brazil. And there's around 40,000 of them. So this is not a minor population of indigenous people. This is a very large network of communities. And there's up to 16 different dialects and even more subcultures spread amongst them and divvied up throughout that region. So they are just as much culturally diverse within their groups as they are amongst other tribes, which is very interesting. So it's made it quite an interesting journey to learn about them and be able to support them in the way that I can, knowing that reading about one group of Yanomami people is not at all about the other groups, but there's common threads of their ancestry and their lineages that they all share. They are one of the most culturally unique and famous people due to the work of people like Napoleon Chagnon and other anthropologists that spent a significant amount of time with them throughout the 60s and all the way up into the 90s. However, there's just as much controversy surrounding the anthropology about them as there is the things I'm going to be telling you about. And it's a whole nother story in itself, but it's definitely made learning about them very interesting. They are very much culturally intact in the way that they have been protected by the Amazon rainforest for thousands of years, while other tribes that were in contact with the Europeans much earlier have unfortunately either fully succumbed to the effects of colonization or just don't even exist anymore. So the Yanomami have been on this very interesting tipping point of being in contact, and now the effects of that contact have really started to reverberate throughout their communities and starting to echo further into the jungle, as we've seen the further deforestation and the other things that have been happening. Shamanism is still very much a very lively part of their community and the way that they express themselves. I was able to basically meet with and sit with all the shaman and the leaders of the community. And this is how this collaborative effort of learning how we can support them through healthcare initiatives came about. They have their own very vital and beautiful, intricate systems of shamanism and herbalism and other things to support them. However, as they've started to face greater and greater challenges from invading gold miners and other people of the like, they've been confronted with epidemics of measles, of malaria, and as of recently, COVID-19. So it's been a very interesting journey for them, especially over the past 2 years, as they've fought very hard to protect themselves and their communities while continuing just to navigate the world around them that's constantly changing. So the Yanomami people are, they're beautiful, unique. They used to be more so of a semi-nomadic tribe where they would have these large circular houses where at a certain point they'd grow to a point where they were needing to fission and separate off, and then they'd kind of fission their way all the way throughout the forest. And now, because of the effects of colonization and deforestation and also just contact with white people, a lot of these villages are staying still more so than they have ever. And they're growing, and the populations are changing because of that factor of not needing to be able to adapt and go into different territories and start new gardens and hunting and all that. So their culture is undergoing a very unique revolution at this point. And just to speak on Dr. Sartorius's point about just the structure of their community, it's incredibly democratic. They are very much of the people. The leaders are elders and also shamans, of course, but when it comes down to making decisions, they make them as a whole unit. And if one person disagrees, they stand up and they state their qualm with whatever it is, and there's a discussion around it. And I got to participate in a very unique assembly of all the different communities while I was there to watch that process unfold. They're very passionate people, very passionate speakers. To watch them defend their positions, to articulate themselves, to share where they see their village and their communities going has been very interesting, and it was an honor to be led into that. So just to touch on some of the challenges they've been facing, and I'm sure some of you are aware of this just because it has been in the news more so than ever before, but gold mining, illegal gold mining, has been one of the biggest challenges the Yanomami people have been facing ever since the late 80s, early 90s. This is El Dorado, this whole region. So if you ever heard that term, the city of gold, this is where the Incans used to mine their gold. And so because of that, there have been some pretty intense waves of gold rushes over the past few decades, and it's picking back up again because as the price of gold increases, the desire for gold to be mined out of that region increases as well. So it's interesting, if there were just to be one decimal point moved over on the price of gold, they could argue that this would solve most of their problems in regards to the invading forces of gold mining there. So it's interesting when we start talking about the gold standard and what that implies for Indigenous people. So these gold miners, 20,000 of them have invaded into their territory. And, they've been introducing different diseases as well as drugs and alcohol and a lot of violence as well. There have been a lot of skirmishes between the groups. And it has come to a point where they are begging for the international community to speak out. Jair Bolsonaro, the president of Brazil, who not many of us are big fans of, his father was a gold miner, and he actively has protested the establishment of the Yanomami territory. And he is notably funded by agribusiness, logging, mining interest, and he's likely to run again for office in the coming year. So obviously politically, it's not the best situation for them in this moment, as deforestation is at a 12-year high. And last year, illegal mining devastated an area equivalent to 500 football fields of Yanomami territory. So, and that's permanently, soaked with mercury, and, the rivers are left dead after these miners go in there. It's pretty, I don't want to say irreversible damage, but it's pretty long-term damage, especially considering how much those ecosystems need to recover, as well as the communities that are living within them. The raids that should be conducted by FUNAI. FUNAI is the Federal Indigenous Protective Agency from Brazil. They are supposed to be conducting raids and evicting these miners, but there just has not been funding. And also just because of the interests of the government, it's slowly starting to shift in favor of these agribusinesses. Actually, just the last 2 weeks, there was new legislation proposed. I believe it was Bill 191, trying to introduce legislation to open up Indigenous territories to corporations and mining interests. And there's been plenty of mining applications that have already been filed in anticipation of this legislation passing. So if you were to do a quick Google search, you'll see that there's been some of the largest protests in the past few years happening in Brasilia at the capital right now. I've had the opportunity to fund some of the Indigenous leaders' delegations to get there, and they're doing their best to fight for themselves. And lastly, these are not just poor gold miners wandering into the forest. These are, a lot of them are criminal organizations sending delegations of people into the forest to essentially mine this gold to fund their own criminal enterprises. So if the Yanomami people attack them in their own defense, they're not facing just poor farmers or settlers. They're facing well-armed militias that have been sent there. And if they were to have any success, there's another group coming right after them to essentially seek vengeance upon them. So it's been quite a controversy, to say the least, and it's continuing to escalate with the seriousness. The health crisis with them, because of this introduction of several different factors, the changes, like I said, in their nomadic nature, they're becoming more sedentary, and where they locate themselves, they're staying closer to rivers so they can be closer to trade items. They have changed their birthing practices because of that. So children are being had more frequently and with less space in between. There are incentives by the government to have more children, which are reverse welfare programs that they incentivize them with money. They have to go spend their money in the village or in the city. So they leave their communities. They have too many children. They can't sustain their agricultural practices. And it's just a negative feedback loop that has left them with up to 80% malnourishment rates in their communities. And the healthcare that is usually offered to them through the government is just enough to give them some level of dependence on the government, but not enough to fully solve any of their issues. They're not focusing on education. They're not focusing on the effects of colonization as a whole. And they're essentially treating the symptoms, but never really addressing the cause. So this has left them feeling disempowered and in a constant state of emergency, which is leaving them in that sympathetic state. And it's very difficult for them to get in that creative state again to imagine a better future for themselves, touching on Dr. Lipton's speech earlier. So with all that said, the good news is that I had the beautiful opportunity to meet the Yanomami people. This was last year after a number of years of hearing about them and being able to work with them indirectly by supporting initiatives to help them open their land for their ecotourism operations that they're using to support themselves economically through their sovereign own methods, with partnering with conscious companies that are helping them essentially monetize the only thing that they can to protect themselves, which is their culture and their territory, leading mountaineering expeditions and helping expand the understanding of their territory with select groups of outsiders. But really what that led to was a dialogue with the president of their community. We got to discuss a lot of what their needs are and touched on all the different information I just shared with you. And it basically led to them asking me to help step in and reform their healthcare system to a degree. So I attended the Ayurka Yanomami Assembly, which was a gathering of over 12 of the communities in that region, which is about 10,000 different individuals. And I got to sit in on those discussions, those democratic debates, and introduce myself to their community and express that, from being a doctor of chiropractic, having a more holistic perspective, my interest and my commitment to discovering how we can find the actual root causes of these malnourishment, and what is addressable and what could be highlighted just to be more educated on so they're aware of it. A lot of these systems and things changing around them with colonization are just, some of it is out of their hands, and then other parts of it, it's more of a remembering more so than learning new skills. They were totally nourished and having a great life in their own capacity for thousands of years. So clearly they're capable of rediscovering that in the context of today, whenever they're empowered with knowledge that allows for them to take their lives into their own hands. So the intentions of the project is, we're calling it the Yanomami Healthcare Sovereignty Project. And basically in this work, what I'm doing is I'm gathering a team of interdisciplinary professionals. I've been recruiting from all over the world and still in the process of looking for any experts that would like to contribute, whether it's in the realm of agriculture, regenerative agriculture specifically, and also in the realm of healthcare. We're going to be going down there in October to perform not only physical exams of all the different community members, but we're going to be performing almost like a census, taking a demographic breakdown of all the different groups and subgroups within the region, and basically being able to come out of that with some legitimate data that can be primary data used to build a case to submit to a special task force within the United Nations to file humanitarian right complaints against the Brazilian government. So all of this is very multi-layered. Basically, our intention is to take a holistic and bird's eye view of the situation, understand what factors are under their control and which ones aren't. And if they aren't under the control, educate them in a way that they can feel supported in navigating that. And then also figuring out exactly how we can empower them in the realms of the factors that are under their control to continue to maximize their ability to thrive in those aspects. There's a lot of focus, particularly on women's health, which has been something that's been put on the back burner there. And so we are looking how we can find ways to keep the women as nourished as possible so they can continue to have healthy babies, so they continue to have a healthy community. So all this project is basically being built off of their desire to become more sovereign and have further autonomy over their future and the progression at which they're going forward in their lives, interacting with this ever-changing world around them. And the overall intention is that, at some point they won't need me, they won't need anybody. We're only as active as they want us to be and participating as long as we need to in order for them to feel fully supported and stable and sovereign in their being. And so just to leave you all with a beautiful quote is, the Amazon has questions we haven't even thought to ask yet. And the Yanomami people are beautifully wise and profoundly connected to this land. I got to sit with their medicine and experience the depths of really what that felt like to be completely connected to the earth with them. And their spiritual prowess, their presence is unwavering. And it's really special just to be around them. They have a very childlike spirit about them. And I think that in our highest evolved states, we are all just children, just playing with each other and really, truly present with the moment in front of us. So I'm really honored to be able to support them. And if anybody in this chat or anyone in this presentation, this group, this summit, has any leads or anybody that feels like would align with this project, we are still actively recruiting for the team that we're going to be bringing in October. We are still actively fundraising, and we are still actively keeping our ears to the ground with any leads or potential collaborative opportunities as this project unfolds.
Okay, Samarpan, thank you so much. Do you want to leave your email or some way for people to get in touch with you if they are interested?
Of course. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat now. And yeah.
Well, that chat won't get to everybody. Why don't you speak it?
Oh, yeah, there you go. So my email is doctor, just the word doctor, DOCTOR at Chiro, CHIROYOGA.com, chiroyoga.com. So doctor@chiroyoga.com.
Thank you so much for your beautiful work. Heartfelt and so important and so needed. We totally appreciate it and your contribution to us today.
Thank you, Mitchell. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. And I also want to do a shout out to Eve Harrison, who introduced Samarpan and I just a few months back, so I can help him get the word out about the Yanomami people and the oppression they are experiencing and the work he and many others are doing to help to revive and create sustainability for them. So thank you, Eve, for that. So, wow, I hope you're all having a really good time. We're going to be uplifted right now by our co-producer, Andrew Kaen, who will be sharing with us a poem, as he does actually every year. And that will be followed then by Premik Russell Tubbs' beautiful music. Then I'll be speaking and presenting a poem actually also. And we have, because we have been so on time, or if you could imagine such a thing, ahead of time, we have asked many of our people to stay on for a bit, where since we have such an august group of people, evolution biologists and others, to stay on, and we're going to have a bit of a roundtable, at the end of which, if Kristen would be kind enough to close with another song, if we're that fortunate, we would invite her to do that. So this is an impromptu little change, but hey, what the heck? We're going with the flow. So on that note, I want to introduce Andy Kaen, who many of you know. He's been the person behind what's been going on here, and he has engaged Rick Ulfick, and he has engaged me over the course of, well, at this point, many, many years, but he has been the impetus behind this particular Peace and Earth Day celebration. So with great pleasure and honor, I want to introduce him here. He is the founder of Planet Heart, which began, as I said, this Peace and Earth Day celebration some 15 years ago. He's an a spiritually oriented poet and deep lover of Mother Earth. So on that note, Andrew Kaen, please come center stage.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to open up with a vibrational sound before I read the poem. Aye-oh, aye-oh, we are one. I see the whole world in my hands, dancing in the streets. As I sit on the rock of our soul is solid, full, whole. The stands, the lands, oceans and stars are within us. Take a bus inside your heart and see that the whole wide world is in your hands. Bathe in beauty, the eye is in the beholder. There is nothing that you are not. The universe is all in you too. There is nothing that you are not. You are everything. And when you join hands with another, and another, and another, and another, the ripple effect begins, igniting the energy of love that is in us all. The light, the way, the truth will set us free to be you and me, free to be you and me in the yellow submarine of our ever-glowing hearts, the seat of our soul. Take the bowl and lick every corner, for you are feeding your mind, body, and soul with the true nurturing that you long for. Love, love. All there is love. The other way does not flow with you, so bow down to your feet and pray for forgiveness. If you choose to find a way to reach the divine's higher calling, I see the whole world in my hands, dancing in the streets. Let us all reach for the stars by placing our feet rooted in the grounds. Rise up your hands in prayer for Mother Earth, and know you are one with her. It is time to wake up. Many are now, things are moving fast now. Soon we will see the other side of our actions, grace and connection. Connect with the one inside your heart is all that is, and see that the whole wide world is in your hands. It is time to rhyme with the horses, dolphins, and birds, trees, plants, minerals, and plant ourselves with the land. Nurture the soul, nurture the land. Love ourselves, love the earth. Find peace inside and find peace on earth. We are one with everything, and it is time to grasp this knowing, as many are teaching this fact. The indigenous first peoples were the first to try to alert us. Let us go back to their ways, for the whole wide world is in our hands, and we need to give her TLC, tender loving care, the way we would treat babies, or our family, or close friends. We are one family. Let us all treat each other with kindness, acceptance, and care. We are one family. Remember, welcome home. You're muted.
I am no longer muted because I want to say thank you to you. Thank you. So beautiful. Appreciate you and your commitment to a better world and to a planet with a big heart. Truly, thank you. And on that note, we have Premik Russell Tubbs, an awesome musician. A few words of introduction. He is a composer, an arranger, a producer, an accomplished multi-instrumentalist performing on flutes, soprano and alto and tenor saxophones, and more. He just can't make up his mind. No, he's just so darn good at all of them. Premik has worked with everyone from Carlos Santana, Whitney Houston, Herbie Hancock, John McLaughlin, Ravi Shankar, Narado Michael Walden, Clarence Clemens, Ornette Coleman, oh my God, Jackson Brown. And he has been a guest on A Better World a number of times as well. Just recently, he's played with James Taylor, Sting, Lady Gaga, just to name a few. He is equally adept in pop, R&B, jazz, and experimental genres. So without further ado, Premik Russell Tubbs.
Well, namaste and greetings, everyone. As always, Mitchell, it's such an honor to be part of this beautiful global tribe. We're all coming to each other from different locations, and that's the beautiful thing that technology is enabling us to do. It's really, really wonderful. I particularly, I've admired all the talks, but very, very, the talk by Samarpan really brought it home to me because starting in 2008, I was invited to be part of Sting's concert for the Rainforest, which took place every 2 years. And so many of the names they named are the participants from those events, all gone to benefit Sting and Trudy Styler's foundation for the rainforest. So I just felt a connection, deep connection with what he was speaking with. And so tonight I would just like to offer, I would call a raga for peace. It's going to be completely improvised. And thanks to my Zoom teacher, Kristen Hoffman, I'm hoping that all the sound works. She gave me a beautiful lesson yesterday on hooking everything up correctly, which all my time of using Zoom, I've probably never done it right. So hopefully everything will go right and nothing will, I'm sitting here amongst a sea of wires and iPads and iPods and pedals and wind synthesizers and God knows what. So let's hope nothing blows up. So what we're going to do is I'd like to offer this as a musical meditation on peace for the earth. Saying nothing more than that and just let it flow as it will. And may this be an offering to dear Mother Gaia in the form of soulful music. So everyone consider this a meditation on peace for earth. Do whatever feels right. Breathe with the music, feel the music. Imagine that you're flowing on a river toward the ocean shores, and just let us all have a beautiful journey together. Thank you. We'll start with a little meditative drone. Sound of the Tibetan peace bowl. Thank you.
Premik Russell Tubbs, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I got to start
Thank you,
playing
Mitchell.
saxophone again.
You mean you have? Oh, yes, I think we had that a little chat during the interview.
With Kristen, you and I, just the other day.
That's right.
I was 11 years old, alto sax.
Well, come on up to Connecticut. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that utterly beautiful improvisation. And Kristen, thank you for helping him organize the technical.
Kristen, I think we made it through it.
You did. You did. You did.
You
Truly.
did such an amazing job, Premik. Your tech teacher is very proud of you.
Oh, such a good student, I am saying.
You were so good. That was
very
truly
good.
Mwah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all. Well, it looks like I am the last speaker, and Andrew
I'll give you an introduction, Mitchell.
Introduce me, and then for all of you still here, and I think it's most, oh good, the Hertogs have remained. I know Bruce had to leave, but we're going to convene because we're doing so well on time. It's not going to be a long one, but it's going to be a roundtable. I would love for us to put our heads and spirits together on this beautiful Earth Day. We don't get that many opportunities for all of us, actually dear friends and evolutionary leaders largely, to come together and to share among ourselves, talk among yourselves, as they say. And we'll have a chance to do that a little bit. And Kristen may speak or play one more song. It's up to her and Spirit. So on that note, Andrew.
Hi. So Mitchell Rabin, who has been our wonderful host tonight, he is an international speaker and teacher, stress management consultant, holistic psychotherapist, writer, and impassioned eco-entrepreneur and environmentalist. Mitchell hosts and produces a New York City-based cable TV show and podcast since 1993 called A Better World. Mitchell works with CEOs of green, eco-oriented startup companies, and he is the founder of A Better World Foundation. Mitchell?
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Way better that he introduced me than I introduced myself. So, you know, usually, as with all of you, I give a talk about what I see as our current lives, current status report, and then projection into the future based on my undying, unfathomable optimism based on sometimes nothing. But that doesn't matter, because when we look, of course, at the human species, we see a lot of beauty and light. And if we're honest, we see a lot of shadow and dark. We didn't need, but it's good to have psychoanalysts like Carl Jung point out that precious and very real relationship between the light of our nature and the shadow. Of course, in order to move forward in this world, we need to wrestle with and deal with, and God willing, transcend and evolve beyond our shadow, or rather, even more accurately, integrate it by making it conscious. So just as Bruce Lipton earlier was talking about, our programs, our 95% life program that is in our subconscious world that governs most of our lives and our activity, thank God for that 5% conscious, which is helping to expand and make the world more unified with our true, deeper desires, vision, and nature. As I was thinking about this evening and speaking at this time, I decided that rather than being pedantic, which maybe sometimes I've been accused of being in the past, or pedagogical for that matter, I decided that the best way to convey my feelings and my sentiment about this time and the last several years as well is through a poem. So I'm going, without further ado, to do that. And that is also going to be a little briefer, and that will also actually give us a little bit more time for a roundtable among us all. And Kristen and Premik, you are totally welcome to be part of that. I would like that. So it's all of us, as we say in the ancient language of Yiddish, mishpucha, our family. We are all one and we're all together. So if you would just tune in to the energy of this poem. Actually, just to say one other thing about it, about 5 days ago at about 3 in the morning, I just popped out of bed. I just couldn't sleep because going through my heart and my mind was part of this poem. And I used to write poetry a lot, and I've allowed the prosaic world to sort of dominate me over the past many years. So I was surprised as anyone that this poem just kind of uploaded to me, if you will, and said, speak it. So I had to do a little massaging, but in general, it's the idea. And it's an idea that, Kristen, you were speaking of before when you first started, of remembering. So that, in fact, happens, which would be no surprise to you or anyone, is the name of it. That's how well and deeply and intimately we are all connected. Remembering. Remembering who we are in the middle of chaos. As we're standing on the edge of an economic, ecologic, psychologic precipice. Facts don't seem to matter. Let us pray that poems do. Prose doesn't rhyme, but without a seeming stopping point, wends through time. The rhythm of a poem beats in our hearts, the pulse of nature through all of time, telling a story of how the time is near to a cosmic breakthrough, the mind of man opening to its fuller bloom, or the sixth extinction, leading us to doom. The gift of Mother Nature, this jewel of a place where jewels abound, and seen from space, the bluest and greenest experience around. The greatest beauty our cosmic brothers and sisters have ever seen, beauty beyond any in the known black hole universe. And we sit on a mountaintop of beauty, of abundance, with the tingling of gratitude in our hearts here on Mother Earth, remembering our long ancestry, while a small band of gypsies seem to mastermind the life of all species on this precious planet. It is time to remember and wholly embrace our natural intelligence, because artificial intelligence is here. It is time to embrace our God-given natural immunity, because artificial immunity is also here. It is time to embrace our humanism, because transhumanism is also here. Mother Nature, Mama, Pachamama, have we abandoned you for artificial constructs of ever seductive stuff? Have we left you in exchange for a piece of paper called money? Is it the more meaningful green? Our poems and movies and stories should allure us into the question of what is the future we want? And remember, we came and come to our soulful natural answer. Our soul seeks a future of cooperation, community, and love. Our soul wants to make love with Mother Earth by our care and being steward. Our soul wants beauty and joy while we temporarily dance on earth, remembering the yearning of our soul while going from day to day, watching war and seeking peace, remembering the longing while we do our daily tasks, our sacred duties, as bees in the hive do theirs, to preserve and protect Mother Gaia, and by that, make our lives meaningful beyond measure, and ourselves as useful and busy as the bees, spreading the sweetness of honey. So, thank you, Elizabeth, Kurt, everyone. Thank you so much. So that's really what I want to share with you all. There's a lot more, God knows. We'll touch upon some of that in our roundtable, which we're actually ready to have right now. Let me check in on the time. We'll go for about 15 minutes. And Kristen, if you are so inspired, then you will leave us all this beautiful night. I'll say a few closing comments after the roundtable, and we'll call it the end, completion of our 15th anniversary year of Earth Day. Such an important day to recognize the sacredness of our beloved Mother Earth, who we so belong to so deeply and love as our own. And as Elizabeth pointed out, basically, it is us and we are her. There truly is no separation. That's just Cartesian thinking, and it's not in alignment with reality. Sorry. On that note, we are gathered. We are gathered, and we can go into our roundtable right here. So we know that our Earth is in turmoil. We are facing a hellish reality in so many ways. Our ecosystem is collapsing. And as the Hertogs were reminding us, and myself a bit as well, we are surrounded by solutions. Kurt Johnson was helping us to see the various levels of issue we are facing today. If we can't even agree on facts and what is a fact, we're in real deep trouble. And if we don't recycle everything, as Elizabeth was saying, we're standing outside of nature. That's the one time we can actually stand outside of nature and look in and judge our recycling materials as something lesser, as opposed to being part of everyday actual reality. So on that note, I just open this up for anyone who would like to jump in first in light of our current situation, and then everyone in our own way. We've met before, we'll jump in. And I see JJ with his hand up. Please start us off.
I wanted to thank everyone for this great dialogue, and particularly Dr. Samarpan for his work with the peoples in the forest of Brazil. And also to mention one of my colleagues, Ann Crutcher, back in 1992 did a documentary on the Yanomami and explained that they were expressing really the survival, should we say, strategy that we need to understand with the creeping destruction of our environments, the need to hold to a high vibration level. And this ties in with what Elizabeth said also, in terms of using music as a scale to determine where the spiritual and the material meet. As ethnomusicologists, Desiree and I have had a chance to be working directly with the indigenous people and their music, and that's a key to survival, higher psychology, the expansion of consciousness, and even, as some speculate, even cosmic contact with the other side.
And of course, also the Kogi who've been to the United States, I think many of us have met them, who call us the little brother because we truly don't understand what we do on this planet. So it's important to realize that some of these indigenous cultures have been living and working in harmony with nature for generations. And we, even going back to the Bible, were given the ability to work with nature and with animals. And we really have not taken that into our hearts and really worked the life that we were meant to be. So maybe this is still coming. I'm an optimist.
The bottom line is the indigenous culture appear to be the middle ground, bringing the scientific and the spiritual together, because their practices for thousands of years have placed them in the exact places of knowing how to survive, how to move, accommodate, and even be in touch with the star nations. I believe as we move into a whole new dimension of a consciousness cosmology, the indigenous wisdom will guide us. We want to thank you, Mitchell, for inviting that remarkable spokesperson.
And all of us. It's been a great program. Thank you.
Oh, God, yes. Thank you so much for your contributions, both of you. It's so beautiful. Kurt, as someone who has been looking at the relationship between science and spirituality, which includes the spirituality of the indigenous people, I'd love to hear you comment, if you would, on what you just heard from the Hertogs.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Some things have happened in the last year that actually surprised me, and I wasn't ready for them in a way. And that is that we've had so many colleagues in the mainstream scientific community come over to this understanding of altruism and the understanding of natural selection that selects for the good of the whole and all of that. But what I didn't take into account is those same people absolutely do not take seriously anything that we're talking about with regard to spirituality or the wisdom of indigenous peoples. What they do is they immediately go to the third person psychiatric or psychological view of that and then dumb it down and dismiss it. And so I find that very, very interesting, because what happens then is you get a cultural nod to spirituality, or you get a cultural nod to indigenous peoples, but then under the breath of those same people is saying, but their worldview is complete superstitious nonsense. So I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out, because I think, JJ, you remember at the Barcelona Parliament of World Religions, the discussion that we had with Jane Goodall and Akihiko Kimura and a bunch of other people about what it would take for the reductionist scientists to actually get on the holistic understanding of things. And the conclusion, as you know, was that they would have to have that experience. They would simply have to have those other experiences, which would mean that they had to factor them into their worldview. So I'm just going to be very interested to see how that plays out, because obviously what's happened in evolutionary biology has opened up incredible doors. And for instance, as Ken Wilber has said, because of understanding group and multi-level selection now, we can understand what drives developmental history with what altruistic developmental history. We can understand that now. So this is going to be an interesting to see how that plays out. And I think I certainly underestimated how difficult it is for some of those scientific colleagues in the mainstream. And Elizabeth was saying this also, who are just so Darwinian that that's the only reality that exists for them. And they're actually even embarrassed, or they would think it's professionally embarrassing to even take seriously what we're talking about.
And I have to say, if I can add that, I think it's like Barbara Marx Hubbard used to say, it takes a crisis. And I do think, unfortunately, we're on the verge of a possible crisis between the breadbasket connected with Ukraine, amongst all the environmental changes that people have been feeling. I have friends that have, been very close to these tornadoes that have come through the southeast. So, this is, I think, what is going to really have to change. Once you get into crisis, you start getting into transformation.
And into consciousness development that counts.
Yes, yes. Elizabeth.
Yeah, Desiree, I think that what's going to interfere with the global empire builders is things like the vulnerability of the internet and the disasters of climate change, which will have everybody scrabbling for a living rather than looking at their iPhones. And the global empire builders, of course, are making their global empire completely dependent on everyone having iPhones and doing their digital currencies and doing their obedience and all that stuff. So once people get off those iPhones or the internet gets hacked and, proves vulnerable, they won't have any way to do what they're trying to do. I love that they're making themselves so very vulnerable. I wanted to say a few things about how we leaders can lead the way in doing some things about the way we talk about issues. And that's one, I had to train myself to capitalize Earth with the E capital, the way we do Mars and Venus, and stop putting the in front of it. Like we don't say the Mars or the Venus, right? We talk about Mars and Venus as living entity, or at least as proper nouns, if not living entities. And then another thing we can do is, instead of talking about people who live harmoniously with nature, we can say who live harmoniously within nature. Anything that can end that separation between humans and the rest of nature. Mitchell, when you say our not recycling is kind of outside of nature, no, it isn't. Unfortunately, our not recycling is within nature, because nature is absorbing all the stuff we don't, they have to deal with our toxins, all the other species and all that. And then one other one, Kurt on the keyboard, permits you to see that you do not have to integrate science and spirit. You have to ask yourself why we took them apart, because they're both obviously part of the universe that you can use the keyboard metaphor for. So we can point that out. Hey, people, why did you take these things apart that belong together? So it is all about community at every holarchic level, isn't it?
Yes. Elizabeth, thank you for that. Again, that's another one of those famous subject-object Cartesian separations that actually does not accord with reality. And I think that we may have the Catholic Church to thank for a lot of that obfuscation of reality as well, between science and spirituality. They are not separate. It's sort of an impossible idea. And the indigenous people coming back to them, because they are sort of the groundwork of everything. And by the way, this shirt that I am wearing is from Vilcabamba, when I was down there in September meeting with Desiree and JJ, the Kogi. I was with a dear friend of ours, Elizabeth's and mine, Susan Davis, and her husband, Walter Mora, who is a biodynamic farmer, farming according to the work of Rudolf Steiner, as you know. And they have a sacred spot that the Kogi designated, who built a spirit house on their land. And so I and a group of friends and colleagues went down there for a period of time this past September. Now, what we keep seeing is that indigenous cultures and ancient languages, Vedic, ancient Chinese, and others, don't understand what the hell we're talking about when we're talking about things like science over here and spirituality over there. Just like in the Chinese, I can speak from the point of view of an acupuncturist and Taoist, that the idea of a mind up here and a brain as separate, or separate from the heart especially, just does not resonate. They don't understand what we're talking about. For the Chinese, there's one thing called the heart mind, and that's here. Like Kurt and I were speaking earlier about thinking from the heart. They have, it's the spirit home, Shen, the house of spirit, and that's the heart. Just as another example of the way we in the West analyze, and as Elizabeth, I know you know the etymology of the word. To analyze means to break down into its component parts. Not to say that that doesn't have its value. However, without the understanding of holism beneath it, the systems underneath it, it's very confusing, and it leads to going to a doctor for an illness, but if he's not a specialist in the illness, he doesn't know what the heck to do, because there's no longer an integrated understanding of the way all of the parts work and harmonize together. Comments? Samarpan.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just a few things jumped out at me from that. First is, Ram Dass talks a lot about knowledge versus wisdom. And knowledge is kind of that dissective process. It's using our intellect like a kind of like a scalpel that we try to cut all the pieces away from it and find the little core of it that we think we can put our finger on. But whenever we know something, there's just even if it's a millimeter of distance, it's us observing an object. Whereas wisdom is going from within and being able to see it from the perspective of being immersed with it, or to grok it, as I think you and I talked about in our interview together. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's interesting because as I've been studying malnutrition, it's a if you look at it from the surface, from like the dissective point of view of trying to separate all the things, it's a very complex issue. There's a lot of different moving parts, and it seems overwhelming to try to take each part separate from each other. But there's something linking it all. There's a common thread that's running through it. There's an essence that's imbued within it that's arising with the symptom of malnutrition, but there's something underlying it. And the more I study it, the more I'm looking at it from the angles that are more familiar with the indigenous people, from a holistic and like participatory experiences, that there's something underlying it that could be very simple and elegant. Like whenever I went walking through the forest with the Yanomami people, they were looking at this leaf. They're like, what does this leaf look like to you? And it looked just like a liver. It looked like it had the lobes, it had the lumps on it. I'm like, I mean, it looks like a liver. They're like, yeah, liver detox. And like, that's what they use to make their liver detox tea. And then like, they point to another thing, and it's like two little like leaves with like a little dangly thing in the center. It looked like a face with its tongue sticking out. I'm like, what does that look like? I'm like, oh, the face. And they're like, look kind of like a snake, right? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, yeah, it's a snake bite cure. And so like, it's like, there's these patterns in nature that are almost shouting at us, like at the simplicity of what it could be. And most of like the conclusions I've come to with how do I approach this project, how do I get these people back to their nourishment, is that like most of it is just returning back to what they already knew before anyone showed up. So I feel like we've gone and we've deviated and we've gone pretty deep down every single rabbit hole we could possibly think of, because once we liberated ourselves from the binding nature of needing to find our food every day, we got very curious, and naturally so. It's like we strayed from the simplicity of what every day required of us, and we liberated ourselves from the natural world enough to where we could think we were separate from it by trying to know it all. And one of the biggest, I think, tipping points that I saw personally happen within one of the villages in a region called Xingu, which is in South Central Brazil, was one of the chiefs proudly told me as I was leaving that they were going to try to get a refrigerator. Whenever I was going to come to Mexico, we're going to have a refrigerator soon. And I don't even know if he was aware of like how big of an impact refrigeration was going to be, because it's not just preserving food. It's now the day's ritual of going to fish and gather, and the boys coming with the fathers to go fish, and the women going out and harvesting the manioca and doing the ritual of making bread with them, that becomes obsolete. And I've spoken with friends of mine who lived with their tribal families deep in the forest, and then kind of came out and started living in the city, and went back to visit their families and offered like, well, hey, like, we go hunting every single day. Why don't we hunt for enough to feed ourselves for the next few days? And the chief looks at him like, he's like, you got those city ideas again, don't you? It's like, what would we do if like, what are we going to do if we don't have to hunt tomorrow? We're going to lose our way. And so a lot of them aren't welcome back in the villages after they've spent enough time outside of it, because the elders know that they are going to threaten their way of life by becoming separate from nature somehow.
Awesome. By the way, thank you for that, Samarpan. I do want to say that what you were talking about when you were referring to the leaf that looks like a liver is a medieval, it's got European bases too, called the doctrine of signatures. It was where the thing is reflected in nature, what it looks like. So they say an aconite seed, which looks like an eye staring back at you, is good for eye disorders. As an example, just what you were saying. I just wanted to share that there's a European correlate to what it is you were saying. But your point is so powerful about the refrigeration. That's said also about bringing wells or even solar for that matter, into remote villages in Africa. This is something because I'm working on projects that can, and I know, JJ, you're nodding because there's a truth to this, that when we're disrupting a whole sociology of a community and the way they interact with each other on a daily basis based on fulfilling, survival needs, and then we bring our modern technologies in that, how disruptive that is. And it's not necessarily a good thing. So, it's a debate. I don't want to say it's give an answer, but it's a debate. JJ or Kurt, do you have anything or anyone to share?
Want to jump in a second? Refrigeration in Africa through Sandancer, which is now working in Zimbabwe and Kenya, is to provide dairy products for babies in situations of medical help. And refrigeration should be seen as limited to respecting the practices of the tribe, and at the same time, affirming the United Nations Charter to save the life of children who are weaned away from their mothers.
And the 17 SDGs to help stop poverty. Unfortunately, as I'm sure the doctor knows, many people have already gone into the cities. We also worked with the Shavanti people, and we were helping them get through schools because that's what they wanted to do. And it's hard for them to get back into that ancient culture, which we respect wholeheartedly. And we were trying to tell them, don't go with just the modern ways. Also understand how important and how significant was the indigenous culture.
Thank you for reminding us of the Kogi, two of you. I was in Greece on a small island when I saw Alan Herrera's first Kogi film in the 1980s. There was, of course, no internet, but somehow he got this film onto television, and it was broadcast in Greece, where I got to see it. And then I went to London and looked up Alan Herrera, and we spent a wonderful evening together. And through another friend of mine, I actually had soon an invitation to go visit the Kogi, which I turned down because I just couldn't do it. But I was in Hopi Land, I think, and I was able to send a dried ear of corn with multicolored kernels, right, to the Kogi through somebody else to kind of, do these interchanges and stuff. So many wonderful experiences that I'm remembering now.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Kurt, you are always up to something inside your voice.
Yeah, I've got so much multitasking going on. I'm still answering people's questions from synergy circles, but that's what I was going to say. One of the really amazing experiences for me has been the biomimicry and holistic design synergy circle in the ELs, and the amazing work that's being done now with biomimicry and holistic design, and particularly among younger mainstream folk who are like latest crops of PhDs, bless their hearts, because they're coming from a completely holistic perspective. And that I find just exciting. And I'm blown away by the degree of what they're bringing into, the landscape in which they're working. It truly is amazing. So that's one of the pluses on my on my plus signs lately.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Premik, I wanted to know if you wanted to weigh in a little bit, and then we are ticking out of time, really, as delightful as this is, to have all of my friends in one room. And we'd love if Kristen would bless us with a final song as we exit this 15th anniversary of Earth Day. That would be beautiful. Premik, you'd like to weigh in a bit? Or
yeah, Mitchell and Kristen, I've got a little musical idea. Kristen, I know Zoom has a little bit of a time delay imperfection, but maybe, just maybe, if you're doing a song, and if I can do a little ambient flute to merge with you musically, if it wouldn't be a disaster, what about giving that a try?
I was actually having an idea that I don't think they're going to work at the same time because I've tried this already with a lot of people, but I was thinking, what if we both come on screen? Can we do that? And maybe Premik and I can contribute to the roundtable in a
Through
in a
music.
conversation, in a musical conversation
Sure.
prayer. So, Premik, what I was thinking is maybe as instead of talking, we'll use our musical voices to interact, and I'll do something, and then you
Sure.
respond, and then I'll respond to you, and what do you think of that?
Well, yeah, I saw some of these programs with these avant-garde jazz musicians, and they were playing in 3 different locations doing free-form improvisation, and it worked just fine. And they said, "Well, listen, it doesn't matter that there's a second and a half delay."
Totally. I
Yeah.
completely agree. And
Cool.
I just want to say that why don't we dedicate this musical blessing roundtable conversation, this sonic experience to, well, I'm feeling just very deeply, may it be a musical blessing for the Yanomami people, and just really surround them in this love. And I fully believe in our conscious connection, in our consciousness connection. And I'm almost coming back to that visual of the waters that we were shown by JJ and Desiree in the beginning, and how they all interconnected. And so I'm going to be envisioning that I'm sending this musical blessing into the waters of the earth and into the waters of our bodies, and may it be felt by all, and may we surround these incredible and important indigenous people, the Yanomami, with so much of our respect, our gratitude, protection, love, and really commit to listening deeply to their wisdom, to their ways, and to the connection with the earth, which has been carried forward so that we can learn at this critical time. So that's what I'm feeling, just that visual, that as we're playing, we are literally sending this musical blessing into the waters of this planet, and may it be felt by all and heard in some way.
Amen.
Maybe I'll try a little drone. What do you think?
Sure.
Let's see. If it starts canceling out, I'll end the drone.
Again, thrice blown away. Exquisite musical completion to our 15th annual Earth and Peace Day celebration. Truly, from the heart, we thank you. And I also want to take a moment to thank all of our technical staff and backup, Roland Marconi, John Raymer, so helpful, Kaylin Holmes, who connected us to Unify, and other live streams, Scott Katamas, and we just had one after the other coming forward asking to be able to broadcast this worldwide. And we are just so deeply grateful for all of the interest in this program we offered today. And I want to thank all of the guests, all of you who have spoken, all of you who have played tonight and contributed to the beauty, the synergy, the confluence of energy that took place here, the great learning and the inspiration for going on and, you know, am I using the phrase, creating a better world. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin. Thanks so much for joining us. This will be aired on YouTube at youtube.com/A Better World TV show. It'll be posted sometime in the next few days or week, and you can share it with your friends. Well, we do it every year, and I hope you just enjoy it. So a big thank you to all of you who have been listening from across the planet. This is for all of us to create a community so we can go on together hand in hand in a global but yet a local community to make a difference in the world and have the impact that we all feel we want to have in our hearts. So thank you again, all of you who contributed directly on today's program. And I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Good night now.